Welcome to Following On. I'm Neil Manthorp alongside the one and only Steve Harmison. We're at Trent Bridge in the aftermath of an overwhelming victory by 160 runs for New Zealand, which gives them a thoroughly deserved 2-1 series win. They played the better cricket for the most part, and they could have won it 3-0 if they'd held the catches in the first test at Lord's. Harmy, let's not talk too much about the actual cricket in this test match, because we're going to leave that to Jeremy Coney, and he's got the good news to talk about. Let's look at England and where to from here in life post Ben Stokes, and you know, how many of these players in this squad, never mind the starting 11, might be featuring in the first test match against Pakistan in you know, just slightly less than a month's time.
I mean, where do you start? You go at the top. You have to stick with Gay and Duckett. With Duckett, I think there's been signs of Duckett in this series where he's back to his best. He got run out of the Oval when he was going good. You know, he got the century here. Even the way he batted last night, and on the fourth night, I think he's the only one I'd take out of criticism, because he got an absolute beauty off Sears, and he was playing Ben Duckett way. He wasn't playing, you know, the kamikaze way that some of the rest of them are doing. Where does Bethel fit in now? Is he
a number 3?
He's not a number 3, but we've said about Ollie Pope, we've said about Jacob Bethel, we've said about the person that bats number 3 who doesn't want to bat at number 3, who's probably more suited at number 6 or in the middle order. There's now a spot. So
can Harry Brook bat 3? Would that make him more responsible?
I wouldn't want Harry Brook to bat 3. I think the way Harry plays in a sort of defensive manner, the way he's very little foot movement, playing away from his body outside off stump against the new ball, I think he'd be more vulnerable to getting nicked off when the ball's newer than when it is older. So I wouldn't want Harry Brook to go to number 3. I really don't. I really wouldn't. I think responsibility eventually, from Harry's point of view of going up the order, is probably when Joe Root goes, and he goes up to possibly number 4. But I think at number 3, the way he stands and he plays, and he stands still, his head position's good, and when he's in a good place, he's still less foot movement, big gap between bat and pad, and he plays away from his body. He does what Joe does and knocks it down to the sort of backward point third region. If the ball's new and the ball's bouncing, that's getting nicked off. That he's putting himself in a position to get knocked off. He doesn't leave that much. He tends to play. So I think he'd be more vulnerable at 3 than he would be at 5. So do England instead of looking for that number 6 or number 7 all-rounder, instead of trying to find somebody or fudge somebody in, possibly try and find a number 3. Possibly try and find an opening batter, and Emilio Gay can bat 3, because that's where he bats for Durham. So there's a possible option of how you replace Ben Stokes. Joe Root's not going anywhere at 4. Harry Brook, for me, is not going anywhere at 5. He played a shocking innings, but he's still one of England's best players. He's averaging 50 in Test match cricket.
Does Jamie Smith's 60 keep him at 6 and with the gloves?
It probably keeps him at 6, but here's the argument again of another way of thinking. If you do keep Jacob Bethel at 3, then you potentially have Smith at 6 with no gloves option like they did at the Oval, and give the gloves now full time to possibly a Jordan Cox, because you've seen he's next cab off the rank. I know people will say James Roux kept and he was the next keeper cab off the rank and all that stuff, and there's nothing against the way James played at the Oval. I think the next cab off the rank batting wise was Jordan Cox. He was just otherwise engaged while he was at the IPL, and that's where James just nipped ahead of him. Possibly Jordan Cox comes in. Do we try and get him to keep wicket and Jamie Smith at 6 and bat? So there's another option. Do we try and develop a spin bowling all-rounder like we did all them years ago with Moeen Ali, when Moeen Ali was playing for Worcester as a batter and bowling a little bit of spin? You potentially could go to somebody like James Coles and say, right, we're going to develop your spin bowling options. We've got a little bit of Root. We've got a little bit of Bethel. Shoaib Bashir has not... He's not done it, unfortunately. He's 22. I still think he's got things to give in international cricket, but I think some time playing for Derbyshire with Mickey Arthur and a prolonged first-class education might do him the world of good in the next year or 2 years for them to come back into international cricket. All these things, because what I say that about Bashir is we are now going back to a four-man attack. And if we go to a four-man attack, Shoaib Bashir can't be involved. He can't be the spinner. I don't think he can play in the four-man attack, first and foremost. You would need four seamers, then you would need four durable seamers, four seamers that you can bowl overs. That runs the risk of how you utilise Jofra Archer. So all these conundrums England have got to get to Pakistan on the 18th of August is... I mean, it's terrifying if you're an England cricket fan, because one man's coming out of a team, but there's a whole load of options and reasons of what you could look forward to the makeup of this side would be, and some of them are, some of them aren't that positive. And bear in mind, we are 3 Test matches Pakistan, 3 Test matches South Africa.
Two in
Bangladesh, one against Bangladesh, and then the Ashes. So England need to find a formula very, very quickly on how they replace Ben Stokes.
I do think that the spinning all-rounder option is something that England should really look very hard at. Rehan's been around the team for ages. Make up your mind. Decide what you're going to do with him. Stop bringing him in to carry drinks and then sending him back to play county cricket. Matt Critchley, James Coles. Exactly.
Liam Patterson-White.
Give them a go. Listen, before we run out of time, Ben Stokes has been talking to the media. He spoke to Sky when his announcement to retire came out on the fourth day of this Test match. This is what he had to say.
Even doing the extra responsibilities now as 35 of just, even, I don't mean this in any negative way whatsoever for you guys, but just this kind of stuff, don't have to worry about speaking to the media about certain things anymore. I can just go out and play for Durham and play the game, and if I've had a good day, if I've had a bad day, I can just go home, have a bit of dinner and then rock up the next day. And I know it sounds silly, but it's something that if you do go through, it does take its toll, I guess, and I definitely feel like it has done. There's a lot of things where it becomes mentally tiring, some of the stuff that gets thrown on your shoulders as captain of the team, but also as a player, the extra scrutiny, the extra expectation from this sport and this level is something that never really bothered me, it never really fussed me, but as I've got to sort of closer to the end of my career, I guess I felt like it has started to take its toll a little bit. And as I said earlier, I don't want to, to feel like I'm having to do things because it's the right thing to do for other people. A huge part of this decision is because of what I think is right for me to still want to be able to play cricket with a smile on my face. And even in the build-up to the game last week at Lords, after 6 months about being away, I should have been like buzzing and ecstatic and excited about everything that week was to offer. But when I got myself into that, it sort of wasn't how I thought it should be.
That's Ben Stokes. That, of course, wasn't just what he had to say. He spoke for almost half an hour to the media, but he's done. He's absolutely done. He looked and sounded a bit finished, Harmy. I know that it's been very, very emotional. The Test match, to my mind, will always be remembered for the unusual act of retiring on the fourth day, just before tea. It was very strange. Is he going to be all right? I mean, he's going to go back to Durham now. He said he loved going back to Durham. He enjoyed the game that he played in the Championship for Northamptonshire when he was stood down from the second Test match. Will he adapt? What will he do?
Yeah, I think he will. I'm not sure Claire will, but I think he will. Being at home all the time, I think it could be quite a challenge for Mr. and Mrs. Stokes, but because it comes to all of us when we retire. But I'm sure the next phase of his career will be played alongside his family, which would be playing for Durham, which were his family before Claire and the kids came along, and then all the cricket outside of Durham. I can see it heavily involving his family. So SA20, a trip to Dubai. I don't see him playing any IPL. He might prove me wrong, but
he can't play next year because he didn't enter the auction. So
yeah,
they could change the rules.
I'm sure they could change the rules for somebody like Ben Stokes if he wanted to push to try and get into the IPL. But you can see he has the love of the game, and you can see that he possibly doesn't love the environment that he's been around in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and that love of the games, that hunger and drive has just left him, and the amount of work he has to do to play at this level, I think going to that, as he said, that one more time was just that bit too much, and I think there's a lot of soul searching going on in his life, getting to that point, to the decision that he's made, and fair play to him. When I first heard it, I thought this wasn't a cry for attention, but it was a protest of retirement under protest, and he might force change, and we'll see him back, and we might see him back for the Ashes next year. Having listened to him and having seen his eyes, I think that's it. Yeah. I don't see him coming back. Yeah. I really don't see him coming back.
Under any circumstances.
Under any circumstances.
Regime, and they begged him, he'd say no.
I think he's done. He had to go to Moeen Ali and ask Moeen Ali, and Moeen Ali said yes the last time the Ashes come. If Joe Root's captain and Joe Root does it, we might be into in the realms of the similar conversation. But when you're done, you're done. And playing for Durham, I think, is going to be great for county cricket, first and foremost, for Durham County Cricket Club. And it was what Ryan Campbell said last week. I think it was Ryan Campbell and not Tim Bostock. Tim Bostock spoke highly when Ben came back. But Ryan Campbell said the door is always open for Ben Stokes to walk back through it. And when he walked back through it last week, he came out and said, I enjoyed being back at Durham, the love of cricket again. He now walks back through that door, and the club will have him with open arms, because he has made his name throughout his career. Ben Stokes, Durham and England. It's now important that Durham put their arm around him and keep that love for him going until the day he finishes playing cricket.
I think, thank goodness, he hasn't fallen out of love with cricket, unlike some of you who finished.
We did, yeah.
And you played on a bit too long.
The challenge of it now that Ben's going to have to figure out is, I didn't have the franchise options, so I could keep playing in the winter. The problem I had was, once I finished playing cricket for England, that 6 month in between of end of September and Durham finishing, and nothing to fill the void of a tour, international cricket or whatever, that's a long time in the dark, in the cold at home, to then get fit to go and do it again. And year upon year that I had doing that finished me off for the love of it.
I just want to clarify that you never fell out of love with cricket, you just fell out of love with playing it.
I did. I fell out of love with myself playing the game of cricket. Okay. And it comes to everybody.
Let's finish with Brendon McCullum now, because a lot of people might not believe, if we didn't have this clip, you might not believe that he said that England's approach on the fourth evening, chasing 373 for victory, was the right one to adopt on this pitch here at Trent Bridge in these conditions. Is what he had to say.
We looked at the game, looked at the situation where we're going to have to bat last on day 5 on a pitch which, when the ball gets soft, is going to be very difficult to be able to have a high cruising speed in terms of run rate without an elevated sense of risk. So we kind of worked out that anywhere between 250 to 290 on the last day is achievable. Anything over that, and you're going to start to be a little bit in danger. So we knew we had to take a risk because we were so far behind the game. We wanted to maximise the new ball, and also the batting conditions in the afternoon throughout this test match have actually been a lot easier than the morning, and it was a risk that we thought was worth taking. Now, of course, we didn't want to be 4 down overnight, but at least we entered today, even with 4 down, we still entered today knowing that we have to score 3 runs in over, which we felt was manageable. And if we could get the game down the line where there was jeopardy in the result, then perhaps New Zealand may miss a little bit more with the accuracy and the relentlessness which they'd operated with. So that was our tactical play with it. It didn't come off, but I don't believe we would have been in a situation where we could have fought our way back into the game unless we were able to make a play like that.
That's Brendon McCullum justifying England's kamikaze madness hour on the fourth evening. Harmy, I if he'd come out and said, yeah, we overdid it, I encourage attacking cricket and I like the guys to be positive, but I think we may have overstepped it. I think we may have overdone it. Then I could just about, say, well, give him a fourth chance then. But I think that he's in. So I think he's in denial.
Yeah, I think he is in denial. I've had a lot to say about Brendon, and it's not personal. It's nothing that I've had my opinions of.
Doesn't
Brendon.
need to be personal. Just look at where they played on the fourth evening.
It's not.
Look at Harry Brooks scoring 21 off 9 balls. Sorry, I'm upset.
No, you're in, and I've gone past the upset bit. I've had my. I think if anybody that listens to talkSPORT, you've seen me have my opinion of Brendon McCullum. I think it's time for the next step. Everything I've spoke about, what happens with the team next, I think that needs to come under different direction. And whether that's Rob and Brendon moving on, the two Richards have got, by the 18th of August, they've got to have something sorted out. Whether if it's going to be Brendon McCullum going forward, which I can't see how it is, but they need to have something in place because I've had we put a lot. Rob Key came out and spoke straight after the Ben Stokes stuff. That's his job. Come out and speak. Brendon McCullum comes out and speaks. You talk about Rob Walton. You don't really know he was there. Brendon McCullum's come out a couple of times now, and when he spoke, he's actually made me more angry about the way this team and what's happening inside in the direction that this dressing room's going in, and some of the decisions that they're making. I think it's now the time for the two Richards to stand up and do some leadership, because English cricket, I think, is going in the wrong direction with what's happening at this moment in time with the cricket team. The culture is the biggest thing, and the culture is set by the coach. Now the captain's gone. I think it's now time that we have a new captain and a new coach going in a direction when they're together, rather than bringing somebody from the inside of that dressing room to be brainwashed by a coach who clearly, if he thinks Day 4 last hour was the right way to go, I'm sorry. I mean, it was amateurish hour.
It's interesting you say going in the wrong direction, because the impression I get is that the needle on the compass is spinning all over the place, and they don't know what direction they're going in. The wrong direction would be better than no direction.
I couldn't agree more. It sounds like I keep sticking the boot into Brendon, and like I said, it's not personal. I think it's time. Bazball has been brilliant. Brendon's been very, very good for English cricket. I mean, and I've loved watching them. They've been an entertaining side, and they've been a side that we needed from the previous times, that COVID, before COVID, during COVID, and just a little bit after COVID. It was the right thing for Brendon McCullum to come in the way he did. But once Anderson went and Broad went and Wokes went and Bairstow went, the more senior cricketers that knew their own game and just needed a mentor and not a technical coach, I think Brendon McCullum has not been very good for quite a lot of these players when it comes to how technically they've gone back as players, especially in Test match cricket. I think it's time for change.
Can I just endorse exactly what you're saying there, because I felt like I was on a second honeymoon when Bazball started. I refell in love with Test cricket in a way that I hadn't for 30 years. I just feel like I'm about to get divorced from it now. Welcome back to Following On. We've done the England debrief, so let's go from the bad news to the good news and talk about New Zealand. Jeremy Coney, they were really outstanding, and they were a team in form. They're a cohesive unit. Their decision making was excellent. They were conservative at times, but sometimes you need to be in Test cricket, don't you? I mean, the individual performances are standout. I mean, Henry Nicholls with a wonderful 100, and he's probably bottom of the list because Matt Henry, Glenn Phillips' debut 100. They rode the wave of aggression, if that's what we can call it, Bazball, that was thrown at them. They were always calm. They absorbed what small moments of pressure they were, and they are thoroughly deserving 2-1 winners, and they could have won 3-0 actually if they'd held the catches at Lord's.
They're a calmly resilient side, aren't they, Manners? If someone goes down, then someone else comes through and gives a performance, basically. They've been together a long time. They literally grow up as a family, as you can see on the outfield. That there's about 25 children there. when we were when we were playing, we were the next step down, you know. So you'd always say, look, we've got 3 weeks to set the standards for the team. This is how we practice. This is where we don't be late on the bus and all that sort of thing. And then after that, the girlfriends could arrive, but no children were at that. But look at that lot out there. It's a nightmare having your breakfast. You can hardly hear nowadays because they stayed at the same hotel. But it's lovely to see, isn't it? And they care about each other. If someone falls down, they're help. And it's the same in the game, you know. Someone can't bowl, look at it, off goes O'Rourke, in comes someone else, takes his overs, and it's the same thing. And they also, I think they feel quite responsible for New Zealand cricket, generally. You know, they want to do a good thing and a good service they want to provide for the country so that they can be proud. And I think they're sort of words you don't hear too much, I understand that, but nevertheless, it's an underlying thing that you don't go below. We've got a level that matters. And I quite like all that about it. It's slightly old-fashioned, I know, but it is there. And I think it does show in some of the performances when they get down.
Jeremy, England have played New Zealand a hell of a lot. Baseball started here 4.5 years ago. Did New Zealand have the perfect game plan for this series against this side coached by Brendon McCullum?
I don't know whether we've seen a lot of baseball from them. I mean, it was pretty hard to baseball at Lord's, wasn't it? And the scores we saw weren't particularly high, and I thought actually England got the better of that series because they got the 1 day of sun. If you remember, they batted in a bit of sun. So, but everyone struggled, I thought, as a batsman, and that, you know, and the guys who got 50, which is Gay and it was Brooke, they were dropped. And so that was New Zealand's problem, I think, rather than England's baseball. If we'd have been good enough, that would have been a pretty close game too, wouldn't it? And if Henry hadn't had a back spasm on the first day and could only bowl 4 overs. So there were mitigating things. But look, England were better first test. We can live with that. And then we were, you know, in a difficult situation, only a 3-test series. But at the Oval, we batted well. I thought that was probably, you know, this and the Oval were quite good test pitches. I don't know what you guys thought of that, but the bat and the ball balance and that equation was much better, obviously, at the Oval. And Nichols stood up, as you've mentioned, about, you know, the replacement for Williamson. That was important. Other guys were getting 30s and 40s and 50s. And that meant that there were partnerships along the way. So we got a lead of 100, and then we carried on from there, and Henry took over with his special skills on the pitch that not many other people got too much bounce, and they didn't pitch the ball up quite so much as the English were a bit shorter, I thought. So that was that game. And then here, I suppose winning the toss helped, but that's only part of it, isn't it? You've then got to make the most of it. And getting 317 with Conway and Latham, England fought back nicely, but New Zealand managed to get a lead, and like Lazarus, we came back, and then we saw a very good innings and a partnership between Ravindra and Mitchell. Very different innings from both of them. I thought Mitchell's innings was a real battling, obdurate kind of thing, which was not the most pleasant. They were even cheering, boring. You know, they were giving him that one. But
it was effective.
It was very effective because in the last 50 runs of his 100, he went at 70 balls. So he accelerated because he had played those 170 balls in his first 50. And it was an important innings, and it meant we had, again, partnerships right down the order. And so we set them a target that wasn't going to be easy, 370 odd.
There's no greater badge of honour, I think, when the crowd start chanting boring.
Oh, no.
Because that means you've been there for a long,
they gave him
time.
a wave.
You're winning the game, and he was deservedly the player of the match. I mean, 100 from 241 balls and 5 catches at slip, struck 4 times, went through 4 helmets. I reckon he's got 20 bruises. I mean, he was very, very courageous. I wanted to ask you about the difference between the 2 stars at the start of the series and their retirements. Kane Williamson waiting a couple of days after the Lord's Test and then slipping away as quietly as he possibly could. Ben Stokes having his retirement announced just before tea on the fourth day, which did seem extraordinary. Your observations on that, and also the difference in the coaches. Rob Walter is the coach of New Zealand. We haven't seen him. People have asked me who is New Zealand's coach. Ironically, he's South African, but has lived in New Zealand for a long time now. But very, very much coaching from the shadows. Leaving everything to the players.
Isn't that how a coach should do?
Well, exactly. I just wanted to. So tell English supporters, if you can, how Brendon McCullum can say that England's approach on the fourth evening, chasing 379, was the right one for this pitch. Who is he kidding, himself?
Yes, I think McCullum's dictum is wrong. It's as simple as that. You cannot play Test cricket in one way. Test cricket demands that you look at certain things and scenarios that happen, look at the clouds come across, be careful, the ball might swing a little bit more, I've got to be careful of a big drive, moment after moment after moment. It is multi-dimensional, Test cricket, and you cannot respond to that all in the same way. It doesn't make sense to me, it's never made sense to me. And as we saw in this response to Chase 373, to play at such high risk, you run the chance of losing a lot of your top order. And as it happened, they lost 2/3 of their top order. And I just feel that's fine if you're chasing 170. It's no good if you're chasing 370. You're not going to get there. All you do is you lose your wickets. Yes, you score your first 100 quickly, but you've lost 4 wickets, and then it's hard to come back. As they found today, when they just batted a little differently, they started to get some partnerships going. They started to make some runs together. And thankfully, because they've lost the 4 wickets, they've got such a long way to go in the game. It was difficult for them to make it up from there.
And New Zealand, from New Zealand's point of view, they've got some tricky fixtures coming up.
Yeah.
The confidence of coming to England and winning in England, with what they've got ahead of them, the home series or the series against Australia.
Yeah.
This is massive for New Zealand cricket.
Oh, it is. As I think I mentioned to you, Manners, 1927 was the first time the guys jumped on the boat. It took 6 months to come away, get over here as they rowed hard. So we've only won 7 times. We had a victory in 1986, which is the first series. We had a first victory was in 83 with just the 1 win at Headingley, and then a victory in 86. We had a victory in 1999, a series victory. That was the last time I think England were beaten in a 3-series victory here, and now they've beaten it again. So this is a significant win for New Zealand. We tend to pass over these things, and these people and these men out here will feel thrilled that they've now done that as well. They're sick of us. They're sick of us in the 80s. They really are, Hadley and Crowe and all those people. And they can make their own way, which is really an important development for New Zealand cricket.
We used to talk so often about how few cricketers there were in New Zealand and how they always punched above their weight. That, I think, is a dated, old-fashioned narrative. And, we also, I remember talking about, this generation of players will be great role models and maybe they'll encourage more people to play cricket. That's now happened. These are the players who are playing because of those role models, and there are more cricketers and the more quality cricketers than I can ever remember in New Zealand before. I mean, I remember first touring New Zealand, and I think sailing and rock climbing were higher participation sports than cricket, with obviously rugby the number one. But cricket has now got a firm foothold. It's established itself on the sporting ladder.
Well, I hope so.
It must do.
They will certainly. They have a pride, and they have a bar also, and the bar says below here we do not go, and that's what I like to see from teams. Have standards that they adhere to. So look. I don't know what I want to say now.
The future is bright. I'm hoping you're
Oh,
going to
yes.
say.
Well, that's the other thing. It's interesting, isn't it? You can have two models. You either have a large number of people who can play cricket, like in India, you choose who you want, and in Australia, they've always had a long period of time where they have players that they can choose from, and they just pick them, right? And they have good systems that you can come through. In New Zealand, with the less numbers, you can actually really work quite strongly and in a very deep way with each person, and so you can develop them as they come through and develop and develop. So that's the other model, and that's the model that New Zealand are using. They last year, just before they came out here, they had 52 players around, out of our 100 odd players in first class, 52 of them were overseas playing, either in the IPL, or they're in the New Zealand side to Bangladesh, or they're in New Zealand A side to Sri Lanka.
Or PSL.
Or PSL, that's right. You know more than I do. Interviewing. That's right, yeah.
And I actually think Brendon's mentality, I've had a lot to say about Brendon, but I actually think Brendon's mentality is that way, where he sticks with players for a long period of time, because that's the New Zealand way. There's 450 professional cricketers.
But it was
in this
when
country,
he was a professional.
When he was a professional, and you had to stick with them players because, by and large, they were all you had. Not in England, it's not. And I think sometimes that mentality in this country, I think that's been to the detriment of Brendon McCullum as a coach, because he's been stubborn. He's stuck with players for far too long in some occasions, and I just wonder if that's going to be inevitably his downfall.
Well, I don't know the system here that you have, but yes, if he does that, if he's stuck with players, and you're talking about people like
Crawley and Pope,
yeah,
and
yeah.
like that.
And look, in New Zealand they probably would have stuck with them as well.
Yeah.
I was saying, but that's often for a different reason, is that there's not too many others behind. But we're aware of that in New Zealand now. We're trying to build it up so we get a Sears who can come out here, and we can get a Folks who can replace one of our key bowlers, and he can do a decent job. So there are two examples just in this game that haven't played a lot of Test cricket, probably 5 or 6 Tests, no more.
Thank you very much for your time. You've been great company as always. Enjoy the series win.
I shall indeed. Just let me go and have a beer, will you?